Jesus paid the price physically. Crucifixion was invented by the Persians and it was perfected by the Romans. The Roman citizens were by and large exempt from the cross. If you were born a Roman citizen, you could not go to the cross. There was one circumstance you could, and that was it. As a matter of fact, on my Patreon channel tomorrow, I'm talking about the history of the cross and how it affected them in that day. It was the death of shame. You would be scourged before you got there. It was a leather whip. The scourging they did had a leather whip, and it had bone or rock or even hooks embedded in it. And so we get these almost pretty pictures of Jesus hanging on the cross, but that's not what he would have looked at. Isaiah tells us in another part that his body was going to be so marred that he was not recognizable as a human. When they scourged you with that whip, those bits of bone and those bits of rock and glass and hooks would pour into, grab hold of your skin. And when a Roman soldier who was an expert at a scourging, it was his job. He delighted in it. He found joy in it. When he would pull that whip back, it would rake your skin off. So most of the time, when you got to the cross, your organs would be exposed. Bones would be sticking out, flesh ripped apart. They'd be barely recognizable. Jesus was scourged. He was led to Golgotha. They made him carry his cross. It would have weighed 100 pounds in all probability, just the one cross beam. They nailed 5 to 7 inch nails in his wrist and palm area. It would pierce the median nerve. And when it pierced the median nerve, it wasn't just to nail them to the cross. It was to cause excruciating pain. And the reason I put such a common word on the excruciating is the word excruciating, the etymology literally means out of the cross. The word excruciating comes from the cross. It comes from the crucifixion. The cause of death on the cross was rarely bleeding out, though that happened. It was suffocation. When they nailed your feet to the cross and they nailed your hands crossways and you were weak, you don't realize it because you do it every day, but you need some resistance to breathe and to push your body up in that position. And so when you went limp, you couldn't breathe, you couldn't get a breath. So with nail-pierced feet, he would have to, a person crucified would have to push up on their feet, catch a breath, hold it for as long as they could, and then drop back down and immediately begin suffocating again. People didn't die from being nailed to the cross. They died from suffocating. People would last hours on the cross, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes nearly 24. And when they got tired of watching you die on the cross, they would come along and break your legs, or at least one leg, so you could no longer push up and you would die quickly. That's why in a messianic psalm, in Psalm 22, that foretold the death of Jesus, he said, "My strength is dried up like baked clay. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You put me into the dust of death." That was the cross. The Romans were experts at this. They knew how to prolong the suffering. Crucifixion was the most brutal, humiliating form of execution, and Jesus walked to that willingly, so much so that the Bible says he was pierced for us. Pierced for us. And sin brought physical death, so Jesus had to suffer physically. He had to shed his blood. He had to bear the full wrath of God. And the devil, knowing that, sought the cruelest form of physical punishment possible. Death on the cross. Jesus paid the price physically.